Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of the RSBot Weekly. And if you don't know what the RSBot Weekly is, then I'm just going to tell you really quickly. And the RSBot Weekly is a series I'm going to start releasing. I'm in digestion, by the way, in which we analyze a script every week. And I personally think that analyzing other people's scripts, just like most scripters do, if not all of them, is one of the best ways, if not the best way, after programming yourself, of course, to learn how to script and how to program, and other techniques that you might not be using. You can learn via analyzing other people's scripts. For example, in this script, we're going to learn a technique that I've been asked a lot for, which is using enumeration to run our script, and that appears in this script, and I chose it partly because of that. And because it didn't seem like a very complicated script. This is a mining script. It's a global miner, and it's not too complicated a script. It just uses some interesting features that I thought would be useful for you guys to know. So yeah, let's get straight to it. This episode is gonna last for around an hour, I think, or so. It will be separated into 4 or 5 videos, and yeah, let's get started. So the first thing we see is a lot of imports. We see that java.awt appears a lot. And what you can do if you don't want that is just substitute all of it by that. However, it's not necessary. And that would, only that. Since all of font, graphics, color, graphics 2D are all inside AWT, you can't substitute these though, because they're inside another folder inside AWT. So only those directly inside the folder can be substituted by the asterisk. So you can substitute those by an asterisk, and those two by an asterisk. So you could do that. I'm just going to leave it as is, just because it's simpler to use with Eclipse. Just right-click here on the icon that appears when you're missing an import, and you click it, and something like this line appears, and you don't have then to change anything. So we see a lot of AWT, and that's all for the paint and receiving stuff from the keyboard in this case. From the keyboard and mouse in this case. So these two are used in the GUI, so that when you press your button, something appears, and these ones are using the paint. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we see some Java I/O, which stands for input output, and these are used to check for the version of the script through the internet, and maybe update it. I don't know if this is automatically updated or not. And here we see that we have URL, syntax, and that sort of stuff. That's again to use the internet. And we've got here decimal format, so that's used obviously to set text into decimal format or numbers into decimal format. We then got the J option pane, and this is the drop-down list box that we used in your GUI design tutorials. And finally, after all of these Java and JavaX imports, we get into the RSBot imports, which basically import all of the things inside a script. So he uses the asterisk, and everything inside methods. Then he imports timer, which I don't personally use. I prefer to calculate the time myself, but again, you can use timer, which is a class that allows you to calculate the time the task passed between 2 points. And wrappers and the events, so he uses the paint and message listener, of course. Okay, so that's about the imports. Now let's get into the script manifest. So the author is Tomo, so props to you for being in this episode, I guess. And the keywords and the name and description and the version. Notice that the version is there, 0.21. And then we've got a nice comment there. And then we got into the actual script. Okay, so this implements paint listener and message listener. So we're going to be using the paint, and we're going to be receiving messages from the server. And here comes something pretty interesting that I thought I'd share with you guys, because I don't necessarily agree with this. He's using a variable, well, actually it's a constant called the version to store the version that is inside his script manifest. In one of my tutorials, I showed you guys how to use the script manifest to automatically update your script depending on what you wrote in the script manifest. So we could do that here if we decided to. This person obviously has decided to create a constant with that name, but he must remember to change both the script manifest value and the value here in the constant. And then we've got some pretty interesting stuff too. Here come a lot of variables. We've got a variable for the pickaxes, for the gems, for the mining animation, for the background, text, progress bar, colors, and those are all final, so yeah, they're not going to vary. And what I thought was interesting was the fact that it used interfaces to store those values. That was pretty interesting. If we go all the way down, we can see how he uses those values. Actually, I think it's going to be easier if I search for pickaxes. Okay, so you see there. Basically, the interface is like a class, more or less. Just think of it as another class which is inside your class. And this is complicated to explain, but when you create your GUI, you created a variable called, I don't know, my GUI, which was equal to a new GUI, if you remember that. You can't do that with interfaces. So interfaces cannot be instantiated, which is what creating a new something is. When you create a new of something, you instantiate that something. You can't do that with interfaces. So this person is using the interfaces to organize his variables so that he can access them easier. So he knows that pickaxes and gems and the mining animation is all inside the gem constants interface. So he can just write game constants and then pickaxes, and that's the way he accesses his variables. So that's some nifty trick you can use. And that works for everything. So he's got a lot of variables here. He uses those for the game constants and the paint constants. So he's got all the colors he's using in variables. And this is a practice I suggest you use. Instead of just hard coding this into your paint, you can create a variable with that or a constant. Actually, a constant would be a better idea. And you can use that instead of your hard-coded value, so that then you can know what color was it. So, for example, instead of progress front 1, maybe adding to the end of it what color it is, or something a bit more descriptive would have been a better practice. But again, we're not going to change the script now. We're just going to comment it. And yeah, again, try to use descriptive names for your variables. You don't want your variables to seem illogical. You want to be able that when you script something, you want to be able to return in a year and understand what is going on in that script. So for that, we use the comments, which this person is using quite successfully there, telling us just in a single line, in 2 words, what this is. And paint constants, of course, we know that these are going to be the constants, which are values to be used inside the paint. So that's a nice trick. And comments is one part, and then descriptive names for the variables and methods is a great plus in your scripts. Then you can read the name of the variable and say, oh yeah, that's what I used it for. And here we see that rock highlights is another one. And these are the colors used in highlighting the rocks, because this person uses the paint to create a small highlight around the rock it's currently mining or going to mine or something like that. So that's something interesting you can insert into your script once we read this. And the one for the ores, so he stores all of the IDs. And East Barrack variables, that's a good comment there. So these variables are all going to be for the East Barrack. So he's creating an RS area, which is the mine area. And if you don't know what an RS area is, basically, if you imagine in the X and Y axes, let me open the paint here. I know you can't see that, but let me open paint. Let's wait till it opens, and I'll explain what an RS area is and how you can use it. It's a pretty interesting tool to use. So we've got our paint, and we open it a bit more. That's it. And basically, if you imagine, whoops, not that either. Whoop, that's the tool. The axes. What an RS area defines is all of the points inside a certain area, and that area is given by 2 points. We've got 2 points, which means 2 x coordinates and 2 y coordinates. So these 2 points are RS tiles. So if you go here to the RS area, we see that there's one RS tile and another RS tile. And I can't remember really well, but I think it was the lower RS tile and the upper RS tile. And so then we end up with, let's change that to 1, something pretty similar to this. So this defines the lower x coordinates and the lower y coordinates, and this defines the higher x, the higher y. So we end up with a pretty nice RS area there, which I'm sure if I use this, the color would run out, so I'm not going to do that. And this is our RS area. So yeah, we can check for if we are inside that area, which will mean that we are above the minimum y and x and below the maximum y and x. Just to check, for example, if we are in a certain RS area, we can perform this action. If we're not, then we can't perform the certain action. The way you create that is you make an RS area variable, you give it a name, and then you make a new RS area, and the parameters it takes is 2 RS tiles. So you make a new RS tile with a lower x and y, and you make a new RS tile with the upper x and y, and that's your boundaries for your RS area. And then he uses another one here, one for the mine area and one for the bank area. So he knows that when he's inside the bank area RS area, that's pretty redundant, he can access the bank or mine ores. We do that in a different way. In our scripts, we check for if the ores are inside our screen or not. You can do this too, but take into account that this doesn't make notice of whether the ores are inside our screen or not. So basically, if our camera is looking a different way, then we will be inside this RS area, but we will not be able to mine ores. So I prefer to use my practice, which is checking for if the ores are inside the screen or not. And then he's got the IDs for all the rest of his stuff. And the same thing for West Barrack, for Remington. And here we go, private enum state. And what enum is basically an enumeration of states. In this case, it's states. So basically, you just set up here the possible states of your script. So we've got a walk to bank, walk to mine, and mine and bank, drop all, drop to, drop hybrid, and random. So I assume these ones cannot occur, all of them, in a single run. And these ones, so basically we will walk to bank, and we will bank, and then we will walk to mine, and mine, and we will do this, or one of these. And random, I don't know what that means. We'll find out pretty soon. And finally, random script variables, so basically the starting time of the script, the runtime, the experience gained, and all that good jazz. We've got actually here a few variables for the GUI, I guess, and here for a short break, for a looking away variable, and these are pretty interesting variables to use in your anti-ban. And then you've got booleans for your locations, so these booleans get turned on, true, if you are in East Barrack or West Barrack or Alkrid. And here the same thing happens with the ores to mine, and the secondary ores to mine, the same thing goes on. And here are the ore variables. These are specified in the interface above, so if you can't remember that. The ore prices, these don't get assigned a value in the start of the script. They get the value on the onStart. And rock highlighting, the same thing applies. If it's true, then this rock gets highlighted the next time it's going to be mined. And power mining variables, same thing. So power mining or drop all or other two strange dropping methods, which I don't know. And finally, we've got the paint variables. So here we go, basic paint or advanced paint, depending on what the user chooses in the GUI. It will turn one true or false, and then the script will be able to decide whether to display the basic or the advanced paint, depending on whether these variables are set to true or not. So we're approaching the end of the video, and catch up on the next video, which will be released pretty shortly.